welcome to High Tea Mystique with your hosts, Kat.
And I'm Tess.
And Pam.
In a world changing faster than the time it takes to brew a cup of tea,
High Tea Mystique reminds you that no experience is too big or too small to teach us something about ourselves.
So join us for a cup of tea as we steep into adulting, womanhood, independence, and more.
my favorite thing though is that this was intentional. And we'll talk about that.
What was?
This break.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Like it's been nice to be like, yeah, we do other things in our lives. So it was necessary for us to practice what we preach, right? Taking rest,
Yes.
making space for the other parts of ourselves, and
Yeah.
giving ourselves time to grow so that when we come back to the podcast, we have new lessons to share.
Mhm.
Yes.
So on that note,
On that note,
I probably won't cut that out. That was beautiful.
Oh, no.
oh, we're recording.
Yeah.
I didn't even. That's funny.
I told you it's like a first date. You gotta just flex that muscle.
Yeah.
We're
We're back. We're back.
Wow, it's been so long. How do you even do dating again? Anyway,
Literally.
so you hear our voices. I didn't hear Tessa's voice.
Hello.
We're back.
We're back.
We're here.
Don't call it a comeback.
We're alive.
Yes.
And we're better.
Season 2.
Very well.
Season 2. Season 2. We had to take a break. I know you might have been noticing the silence in the podcast realm for us, High Tea Mystique. And we've actually, I don't know if Caitlin, you know this, we've actually had some people kind of reach out, at least at work, some people that I know that listen to us, letting me know, hey, you guys, you're not stopping, right? Like you're making
Yeah.
more episodes. And I was like, of course we are. As with anything and as with any human, we need a break.
Yeah.
We need some time to recharge. A lot of us, we're trying to get big things going. We've been very busy, and with the holiday season, which is where we had ended our last season, right? Our season finale was revolved around Christmas. And so we wanted to take that break, that pause, kind of like what Kat was saying earlier, practice what we preach, which is funny because those are the words that I had used when I was thinking about today's episode, as I'll be leading today. But yes, welcome back. We are so excited to be back, to have more conversations. We are super ready, super refreshed, recharged to provide you guys with better quality episodes, a lot more different topics that are coming, more interviews, more guests that we'd love to feature. So we hope that you are all excited for that. We've also announced our giveaway winners. Yes, winners. We decided to choose 2. And so we hope you guys really enjoyed that. We really appreciate all of your guys' support for our podcast and all the love that we've been hearing from all of our friends. And so another new and exciting update with the new season and the launch of our new season, we also have
Drum roll.
yeah, fake drum roll. A new Discord server.
Woo!
Yeah. So what is that? I mean, if you haven't heard of it, it's basically a messaging app, and we talk a lot on this podcast about building community and helping our community and wanting to have these conversations and provide a safe space, right, for people to kind of explore, maybe step into the world of spirituality, mysticism, self-awareness, whatever it is that we've talked about on the show. And so we wanted to open up this season with giving you guys a beautiful gift, and hopefully one that you'll help us build together, of building this community, and we're going to start with Discord. We figured this would be one of the best ways to get interactions with you all, and hopefully build the community together. Maybe you guys can inspire different episodes for us on there. So we will be posting a link on all of our social medias, and we'll be promoting it so you guys can join us, join in the conversation, help us give ideas for future episodes. So we really look forward to engaging with you all on that platform. And of course, following suit with practicing with what we preach, today's episode is also the start of a new series that I've been wanting to start called Mindful Moments. I know that we've spoken a lot on this podcast of suggestions, advice, right? What should we do? What are things that we can do to handle anything that life throws at us? And right now, as a quick little update, astrological update, at the time of filming this, we are in Mercury retrograde.
Dun dun dun.
Soundboard.
Right?
future soundboard.
That was really just paying homage to the last time we were in retrograde because that's what Tess said afterwards.
Ah,
Dun, dun, dun.
my heart's aflutter with the way you love me, Kat.
No, never forget.
So Mercury's in retrograde, Gatorade, all those fun things, right? And it's specifically in retrograde in the sign of Aries this time around. And so, as we've mentioned before, right, retrograde has a way of bringing back the past, of bringing back previous hurt in our lives. And it being in Aries energy, we might feel more inclined to act quickly, act on instinct, and have more reactions to things, especially because that's what Mercury does, right? It's the planet of communication. And so we might feel more easily triggered, right? We might feel more of a need to react back, fight back. Um, Aries energy is very much the cardinal fire sign. And so their verbs, their words is I do. It's all about action, right? But retrograde, as we talked about before, you should take a moment to pause and think about what is the universe trying to teach you? What is the lesson of whatever's coming back into your life right now? What is left for you to learn? And so, in that spirit, and in the spirit of it's the new year, we might be a little bit late in our start, but that's okay. It's the new year. And so, I wanted this first episode to be almost like a reset, a refresh, right? So those are kinds of the themes of our guiding questions today. We also have some really nice tea that's called Peace Train, and it is a tea that I bought from the Renaissance Festival here at Florida. There was a lady who had a beautiful herbs teas stands, and she even was selling um blocks of salt that she said she uses for in place of body wash, and it helps regulate, she uses it instead of that, and it really has really helped her skin. But I was very drawn towards the teas, obviously.
Mhm.
And this one, I believe I said had I can't remember.
Did it have the spices that you purchased individually too, or
No.
oh. It definitely smells floral.
Yes.
Do you want to?
Floral, mint.
Can you get it? Can you get it? Yeah, so along with the tea, I also ended up buying some other herbs like juniper. I got some flowers like calendula. Learned how to say that recently. And chrysanthemum. And the peace train, I got it because the lady had mentioned to me it helps you relax, right? And I really like the name Peace Train. I thought it was the perfect tea to kind of start off our next season. Thank you, Tess. So this has somewhere on here. Oh no, it doesn't say. I thought it did. That's okay. It's definitely floral. I don't know if maybe Kat can see some
Let's
of
see what I
the
see in
stuff
there.
in
Let me
here.
figure
It
out.
kind of looks like lavender buds, honestly.
For sure, lavender. For sure, rose hips. Some other. Oh, and roses. Rose buds, rose hips, lavender. I can't tell what the yellow is. It could be a dried citrus, but I don't taste that, so I do think it's another flower. Could be chamomile.
Oh, it might be. I think I remember her mentioning that. Which makes sense, right? With Peace Train.
Yeah, all very relaxing, soothing. Rose hips are also a diuretic, so helpful with digestive.
Oof. That's very nice.
All the things that you want to be happening while you're sleeping and
Yeah.
relaxing and resting.
Yep.
Mm.
Rejuvenating.
Good things happening for the tum tum.
Yay.
Mhm. Make sure you take care of your gut. So yeah. So having said all of that, right? The peace train, I wanted us to be relaxed, to really have a positive spin on this episode and kind of go into this season, into this year that much more motivated for us to continue on throughout the rest of the year, especially during this retrograde. So one of the first things that I want to talk about is I want all of us to celebrate, right? The start of the new year has already happened. At the time that we're recording this, it's the beginning of April. And so I think it's really easy for us to kind of set up a lot of New Year's resolutions, a lot of New Year goals, and then they kind of fall out, right? And things may not go as we have planned, as we've talked about in the past. But, April is also the start of a different kind of year. It's the start of the astrological year, and we have a different start of a year in February, the start of the Chinese New Year. So I think really this concept of, I already failed. So what's the point? The point is there's still so much time, and time is just what you want it to be. Really, if you want it to be restrictive, it will be restrictive. If you choose it not to be, it won't, right? So we're going to take that first step, and you feel free to take it with us. And I want us to kind of highlight and celebrate and highlight either a big or a small win, because whatever they are, they're accomplishments that we've been able to do for ourselves, right? So the first question is, what is one thing you've accomplished this year so far? And I think I would love to start this question with Kat over here on my right hand side, because I think Tess and I kind of relished an accomplishment of hers recently.
Thanks, ladies. Yeah, I have a big one, y'all. I mean, everyone who's listened to our podcast knows that I am in the realm of theater and performance, and I officially got to check off a huge bucket list goal this year by directing my very first play.
Woo!
Yeah, so it was definitely a process. Oh my gosh, it was crazy. And it was a big reason for our hiatus. I think all three of us had a lot of big goals happening at the beginning of this year. I mean, hey, who doesn't?
Mm-hmm.
And we were worried about not being able to put our whole heart, into the podcast, because as full-fledged humans, we have many different passions in life. And so theater is a huge one of mine. And I've been working on this play, curating it with the writer and the theater that commissioned this work for over a year, like a year and a half total, I believe. And so to finally be able to bring it to life was a dream come true. And the process was, I would like to say, perfect. I don't think everything comes with its unexpected trials, but I was just so proud of the work that we did. And I really do consider it my crowning accomplishment of the year so far, because I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about who I am as an artist today compared to myself maybe when I was like still in school, and the artist that I feel like I graduated during the pandemic, and there was a lot of soul searching, right? And like purpose finding within my art and having to redefine who I am, or feeling like I needed to redefine who I am in my art. And so it was really grounding to kind of be behind the table and create the big picture of this incredible story that highlights humanity, but through the perspective of the female experience. It was an adaptation of a classical Greek play called Lysistrata. And we set it in the Middle Ages with an incredible playwright and brought into a very funny, uh, relatively simple world. And with heavy themes, I think it was a perfect mesh. And so I do give a little bit of credit to myself for the casting. I think that was the hardest part of the entire process, because I had so many talented friends and new faces who auditioned for this show and who believed in this show. And I was only able to cast 8 people, And so it was really tough to nail it down. But once I did, and we had our very first table read that day, I knew that I had chosen the right team. And then one of my actors was unable to do the show. Yeah, they let me know the first week of rehearsals. And so that's why I say it was a perfect process, but everything comes with its own trials and tribulations, and you'll never see them coming. And so here I am worried. I had my perfect cast. Like, how could I possibly replace this member? And then only to find, and so as if there couldn't be anyone even more perfect, the person to replace that actor was one of my really good friends from college. And I actually didn't have anybody in my cast. I had very few people audition for my show who I went to college with. Actually, no one from my class. And so I got to end up working with somebody from my class, somebody who like went through the trenches with me, and was so easy to work with, slipped in seamlessly to the process, and brought exactly what the show needed. And so it was really, really awesome, I think, for it to end that way. And it's insane because I feel like with this process, I always knew it would. I feel like I had a couple of moments where I struggled with imposter syndrome. The other struggle that I should probably mention was that this was a world premiere play. I had mentioned like talking, we worked on the play for over a year and a half. Normally, you don't do that. But because this was the playwright's very first time adapting this play and putting it to new words in a new place in a new setting, uh, we had a lot to figure out in putting it on its feet for the very first time. And so there were a couple of rehearsals where I'm there as the director and I'm like, man, everybody really, really trusts me to make the right call in bringing this story to life. And certain elements of the story are a little bit fantastical. It's mostly set in reality, but it's Greek, right? Ultimately, it's based off of a Greek play, and Greek goes very otherworldly at times. And so I had to really tap into, like I said, like that the creativity and discovering who I am as an artist and how I want to be seen through my work. And it was a lot of fun. It felt like it felt like I got to play every single night, for those 2 months that it took for us to put on the show, and really rewarding. The crazy thing that I just have to mention is that we didn't get very good reviews for the show, guys. Like,
Really?
yeah, like it's really interesting because we live in Miami, Florida. There's this whole other climate, and there's also this climate of other theater that's happening. And
Mhm.
one of the reasons why the company and I wanted to do this show was because we felt like there was a lack of classical pieces being done in our community. And not that classical pieces were no longer relevant. I actually feel like a lot of classical pieces are extremely relevant. And in the same ways that we believe that history repeats itself, it's okay to take an old theme and give it new life. And I feel like Lysistrata is a play that it's ultimately, guys, it's a play all about sex. There's a war, and the women get together and decide that since the men are the only ones going to fight and also die in this war, aka husbands, sons, family members, they were like, let's put an end to it and just cut off from sex. Then the men will have to succumb to our demands, and the war will end and we'll win. And so ours is a very, very similar spin-off of the original. And if you look at the current political climate that we're living in right now, there are so many parallels to that story, to the times that we're living in right now, right? Do we use sex necessarily to like stop people from senseless violence? Maybe not all the time, right? Maybe not most of the time, but the idea, right, of using what we have, of using ourselves as opposed to staying behind and staying silent, right? We're constantly calling each other out that it's our voice matters. And so how could that theme not be relevant? And that's what I believed in. That's what the theater company believed in. And ultimately, I think that's why the reviews were what they were. Is that we put something on that was very different to what's happening in theater right now in Miami. There's a lot of world premieres happening right now for very modern and very contemporary works. So I think it was risky, for us to do what we did. But when I tell you, like, I'm so proud of the work that I did. I'm so proud of the work that the actors did, that the designers, everybody involved. Oh my goodness, two of my best friends got to create the music for the show, and
Wow.
it was their very first time doing theater. These are my friends Ben and Adrian, who are completely from like they performed at freaking Vans Warped Tour, with my boyfriend JP, like back in the day. So what a different background to come, and be able to dive into theatrical work and creating underscoring and ultimately an entire soundtrack originally for this show. So again, I have nothing but pride for the work that we did, and I'm itching to be able to do another one soon. So let's see what happens. Let's see when it happens, because I know it will. I
Yeah,
definitely know it will.
I would even add on to say that Lysistrata is a play about protest, you know, and there's a lot of protesting going on in our times. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like just to echo the magnitude of, I watched Cats play, and I loved that cast. I think my favorite character was probably the one you're hinting at,
Hmm.
who was the village
Priest.
priest.
Ah,
That character was phenomenal. Was that the person who like came in at the end?
actually, no, no, no. I
Okay.
always knew I wanted Sarah, and I
Okay, great.
did go to college with Sarah, but she was a year above me. So
Ah,
I never really got to work with her in a great capacity. And
okay.
when I tell you, I thanked her so much for thanking somebody for wanting to act. Obviously, she was going to audition for my show. But at the same time, like everything happens for a reason. And I really genuinely thanked her. She hadn't been in theater for a bit. She's been a teaching artist. So this was one of her first plays back out since college,
Wow.
and she did it because she trusted me.
Yeah.
She did it because she wanted to be in a safe space in theater. How unfortunate is it that even in theater, even in artistic spaces, people cannot feel safe?
Yeah.
That's the world that we live in. And so she blew me away. She blew
She blew
everybody
me
away.
away.
And it's a comedy, y'all. So like she made you cry, she made you pee your pants. Like
Yeah.
it was incredible.
It felt like she walked off of like a Monty Python set.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I was
She would
like,
love to hear that.
wow. Well, listen to it now, Sarah. She's my favorite character. She did a phenomenal job. I loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think all the actors did such an amazing job, and such an amazing job at keeping in character with a different accent. Like keeping those British accents and the distinct British accents.
Right. Because it
I thought
wasn't
that
all
was so
British.
impressive.
There was some Irish, there was
Right.
some
Yeah.
Well, this is for
Scottish.
Christiana herself, right?
Yeah.
She's so rural, right? Living on her, tending to her land and trying not to come into the town because of the way that people view her.
Yeah.
So she has this like totally, she was more of the Celtic
Mm-hmm.
influence.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. Which I thought was very interesting because I was even telling Pam, like when we were watching the show, I was like, I find it so interesting that she's like the more, I said Scottish, but Celtish is still the same because
Hmm.
that was, I think, the most rebellious force that came against, the Protestant church. So that was a long rebellion for, Great Britain.
Right.
So, and that was Lysistrata, who is the embodiment of protest in any means that you find possible. And she had nothing, right? Lysistrata in the ancient Greek play and Lysistrata in Cat's play had nothing, right? She was at the lower end of the stick, right? And she still found a way to rally people together and protest and bring something of importance to, what everybody thinks is the norm, right? And she said, no, this needs to end. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Hey, I mean, and shout out to the playwright Venetia Coleman,
Yeah.
because she hates the original. And when she told me that, when I sat down for us to have our first like just discovery meeting and talking about the story, I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're the perfect person to write this play then." Because like I mentioned, I think that the original play is flawed, not
Mm.
just because it's the perspective of a woman written by a man at a time when plays were all performed by men. So think about the context of a comedy performed like that.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
like think
for
about the
sure
context of a
comedy.
comedy that we see now as so pro woman, pro feminist. How could that possibly have been received when it was being performed by men?
Yeah.
Mm.
Like I can just imagine them making a mockery in the freaking
Outdoor
Um,
amphitheaters out
amphitheater.
there
Thank you. Thank you.
while orgies are happening,
Mm-hmm.
probably. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Screw you,
And
Greeks.
like they're doing it, right? They're doing it because they're trying to balance out of this
Hmm.
crazy Oedipus Rex that they saw the day before.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like that's not the history. We had to rewrite that,
Yeah.
because the way it lives on now, I really felt was so perverted from the way that it was originally done. So let's create a play that can actually live on. And
Yeah.
I would like to think that we did.
Yeah. I think about the way your priest said lines multiple times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I have
It's
to be
perfect.
honest, when we were gonna go see it, I was so tired. Like it was such a long day. I can't remember what I had done, but I remembered
We
I was
had done
very
Ren
slept
Fair
deprived.
that day.
Oh,
Oh
that's
my
what
god,
it
no
was.
way.
Yes.
We had done Renfest.
Wow.
Yes.
And so I was
In
with
the day
yeah.
and then play at night.
Yeah. And I was with Miguel.
That's so appropriate though
Yeah.
that you guys did that.
Well,
That's
and I was
the cutest
I
theme
was
day
so
ever.
scared because I saw it was a Greek play and I was like, oh no, I don't want to fall asleep.
I get
And
it.
it was such a pleasant surprise, like I did not know that play whatsoever. I don't have a theater background, not super into
Her
literature.
theater background is being my friend.
Having theater friends. So I had no idea what I was getting into. I just saw, oh, Kat's directing the play. We gotta go watch it, and it was phenomenal. Like even just knowing now that the music was made by your friends, I had no idea. Like to me, and again, I guess untrained ears, I don't know. But for me, I thought it was great. Everything seemed so professional. The acting was amazing. There was one point in the show where the lighting that you guys did that just kind of fell on the strata was so incredible. Like just everything about it. I really enjoyed it. The spin on God, like all of it was just I loved it. I laughed. It
Dolly
was
Parton
so
vibes, but like not. It was great.
If Dolly Parton was Egyptian.
Right, exactly. In the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a huge, big thing you've accomplished this year. So congratulations.
It was. And it was also really satisfying to see how many people from my community showed up to see it, especially people who don't normally see theater. I can always count on Pam and Tess to go out to the theater,
Hell yeah.
either with me or without me to go and enjoy something. But it was really nice to see other friends kind of get out of their comfort zone a little bit, saying, like, I don't know the last time I went to a theater. I have a friend who moved here from London for his partner who he's
Wow.
with and hasn't seen it since he lived I'm sorry, he came from London, they lived in New York, and then he moved here during the pandemic, and he hadn't seen a play since he lived in New York. And he was talking about how often he went to the theater because he lived in New York and he's originally from London. Like theater is
Yeah.
what you do, and couldn't stop picking my brain after seeing the show because he's just itching for more theater now that he's gone to it.
That's
Really, really
awesome.
refreshing.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, that's just my accomplishment.
Yeah.
I mean,
we still have so much more.
mhm.
So now I'm going to turn my head over to this side of the table and ask Tess the same question. What is one thing you've accomplished this year so far?
Mine's is simple. And I'm no less proud of it. But I will say that I went to the doctors. Pause for dramatic effect and close. So, I've been really struggling with that because I feel like I always had it in my head that, I knew what was wrong with my body, right? And I knew what was wrong with my health. So I was going to fix it. I was going to go on this very independent YouTube dive journey and solve all my problems. And, that wasn't working out. And I kind of told myself at the end of 2023, like, I need to make a doctor's appointment. I need to check in on my physical health because I feel like I've done a really good job in checking in with myself, my emotions, my, mental stability. I've, invested a lot in a therapist in 2023, but I was like, I need to kind of turn the coin and look at my physical health. I was motivated by a lot of friends to do it, so I'm thankful for them. And, I was really proud of that moment because I was terrified of it. I was terrified of, getting the news that you dread. And I'm sure all of us can relate to that. We're like, oh God, I
It's
know
the
it.
reason why I put off the doctor. You're my hero right now.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
Yeah.
God, I don't want to hear what they have
You're
to
hitting it
say.
hard with that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I just kind of told myself that it needed to happen. And I tried my best to not think about it too much. Tried my best to be like, I'm just gonna call this number. Yeah. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
appointment. When's the next day? Okay, I'll take that one. Sure. Hang up. Panic. Let's do something else. And the day came and I was again supported because I had a lot of good people around me. I was very vocal about it. I would tell people like, yeah, I'm going to the doctors. Yeah, they're gonna, do some tests probably. I want to ask these questions. And I would plan a lot in my head without trying to panic about what's the significance of going to the doctor and what's the bad news I'm going to get. I just wanted to go in there and have a plan because how easy is it to just be kind of overwhelmed with this doctor who's like on their 20th, 25th person of the day and they're like, boom, boom, bing, bang, bang, gone. And I'm like, I know that's going to be the energy, but I want to do my best to advocate, say what I have to say. So I would plan. I would like mentally rehearse in my head a lot, especially that same week. But like I said, the day came. I had a lot of support going in. And I didn't get the best news ever. And I was expecting it,
Mm.
as I said jokingly, but also realistically, like we know it's a joke and it's funny because it's true. And man, I can't emphasize how much fear I had going into it. And I left it feeling also very empowered because if you have the right doctor, if you have, and you give yourself the time to advocate and speak about your worries and just, let the doctor do their job, obviously, but also say, like, okay, I know we're not talking about this, but this is on my mind. And, my doctor humored me. It wasn't a, well, we're not going to look at that right now because this and that. And my doctor was like, oh, okay, well, have you felt this? Have you felt that? Okay, so, because you said that, I'm going to change my prescription on this. And that was very empowering for me because there are doctors that will be like, well, the pill shouldn't affect you that way, And then there's a doctor that's like, well, I completely understand. So we're gonna change, this type of medication for this disease because it's not, something I've learned also is that there's no there's not just like one pill for one disease every time. If you want an alternative, you speak for it and you ask and you have conversations. And if someone's not willing to meet your alternative, you gotta
Find someone else.
find
Snip,
someone
snip.
else. Yeah, yeah. But like I said, I left that appointment feeling really empowered, taking charge of my health and feeling less in the unknown. Because as much as I said in the beginning, like, oh, I know what's wrong with me, I know what's going down with my health, I really don't. I really don't know. I could say superficially, yeah, my weight is a problem. I have like, like adult acne, but what does that really mean? You know, what does that mean for like levels of, I have no idea, but even
Mhm.
hormone count, because that was something that
Yeah.
she did.
Right.
And, that's also telling because a lot of people will tell you, like, oh, it's just genetics, it's just genetics, it's just genetics, but that's not a solution. But anyway, I'm really proud of that. And I guess it's also encouraging to reward yourself for those smaller items on your list as well because it seems like nothing to go to a doctor's appointment, and you know what, it is, it really is. Especially if you have insurance, and I'm lucky enough to be covered by my employer, so I really don't have to think about the cost of it, right? um Especially because it's an annual, and thankfully the insurance covers that, all these smaller details, yada yada. But at the end of it, if you have the resource, take advantage of it. um there's so much to worry about, especially the unknown. You know, we live in an age of anxiety where a lot of us are kind of covered in the unknown.
Mhm.
We don't know what's going to happen next. We're feeling uncomfortable about this. So don't let your health be an unknown factor, right? Let it be something that, you always don't have to have everything down, but can have a clear path of, what's going to better it, what's going to really work in the long term of things of livelihood. And that's what I'm looking at right now. So I'm really, really proud of doing that. And even if I call and they're like 3 months is your next appointment, I'll take it. um, I will. I know it sucks, and what can I say? I feel like every one of us has to deal with that, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably a big discouragement. You're like, oh, I'm not gonna go. They're not gonna see me for like another 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
But try, and if it's not the same office, find another provider, but definitely give yourself something, because I regret not doing this earlier. I regret not getting not having the confidence to, put myself first, because I was just buried with, well, I have work, well, I don't want to take the time off, well, I have other things. And, the time off, like we were saying earlier, really helped that. Like just clear my mind to just think about it, which I didn't have the space in my mind before. But now I do. And it's found itself very cozingly with other things, and I'm really proud of that. Yeah.
Honestly, talk about a small win, a big win disguised as a small win, because
Right.
the courage that it takes to say, I will go to the doctor because I know that I need help with my health. I feel like going to the doctors is something, especially for women, that you feel very guilty about, and it's can be more exhausting, right? Because maybe the pains that we mention are easily dismissed. And so we're not truly heard by doctors. And so it can take a lot out of you to go from doctor to doctor to doctor and like have really bad experiences, you know? Like that's a huge part of the reason why I've put that off in my adult life, you know? Because when I have gone to the doctors before when I was young, it was almost like a punishment, you know? And I'm 13. I don't know anything about health and nutrition. That has to be taught to me. We don't do a good job in the States about how to do that. My parents tried their best, but you know, like they had their own, they were a small business at the time. They had stuff to handle. It's really hard to try to own your own small business coming from an immigrant family. And so it's something that I honestly like I'm proud of you too and look up to you because that's one of the things that I've been wanting to do and it's been such a huge scary hurdle. You know, like I feel like especially our generation, right? We haven't really understood when the jump is supposed to be. You're now an adult. I
Oh,
feel like
millennials.
yeah, a lot of us and I'm sure a lot of Gen Z people and younger feel this too, but it's the idea of like damn, we're old now and we still don't know how to be an adult and we're scared to even still pick up a phone call, just text me. And so the idea of setting up at a doctor's appointment by yourself, finding a provider by yourself, making that call, setting up the appointment, and bracing yourself because you don't know who that doctor is until you get there and how they're going to respond to what it is that you have to say. And, you know, I have heard a lot of stories of people having been told by their doctors with any sort of diagnosis, like Google it, or not really answering their questions, or not truly listening to them and say and thinking or giving them things that they don't necessarily need, right? Because they're not truly listening to what the patient is saying and hearing them. And so that like I'm gonna start the next question to lead into with yours with your win. Um, but I don't know if you had anything to say before I say mine.
Yeah, I just wanted to absolutely affirm you. I also agree with Pam. It's something that, like, as an adult, I've done, I can probably count on one hand. You know,
Oh,
like in my adulthood, how many times I've gone to the doctor, and that's like including like doctor and dentist, you know, and like general physician and dentist. And I largely attribute it to the fact, and I'm sure you can relate, that I taught myself, right? Like I taught myself how to be an adult. You know, unfortunately, my mother is an amazing woman, but she didn't help me when I left the house, you know, and I've been taking care of myself and paying my own bills since I was 19. And so those are the things that fall through the cracks, right? Because it's an extra expense for many, many years until you finally work a job that actually gives you insurance. Because until then, you're just a part time minor. Like until you're like 25, you're viewed as a minor at most jobs because you're viewed as a child. It doesn't matter that I'm legal, right? And I can say this now too as a 30-year-old, the way that I look at my younger coworkers, like I love them, but I can't expect to hold a conversation about what my day-to-day life looks like compared to theirs because there's a gap,
Mm-hmm.
unless you separate yourself, right? And you put yourself into the world where you have to fend for yourself a little bit younger. And so the idea of going to the doctor is huge, and it is something where, like, absolutely, Pam, like, yes, we're millennials and we don't know how to do things and we wait too long because who knows? I think there's a plethora of reasons. And I would love to know the statistic for how many people are afraid of going to the doctor. And how
Yeah.
many people in our age demographic are afraid of going to the doctor?
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it's something to fear, but it's also nothing to fear. Because the fear is what we already know. And I think all of us have the fears of what we already know about our health, right? Those things that we keep in the dark and we're afraid to share with anybody other than our close friends, if even. Um, and if you don't tell it to your doctor, they won't know either because everything that you said is so, so true. And yeah, I think it's incredible, and I see you because
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
And talk about the
Yeah.
level of vulnerability it takes too. Like to be fully honest, we're so like the society that we live in, there's such a standard of beauty, of way of being, a way of looking, a way of living, right? Like I don't even think this is an assumption, but I feel like most of what is being even shown to young adults now is not even drinking heavily, right? It's like taking vitamins. It's about being healthy. And so talk about the pressure that they must feel and the idea that going to the doctor feels such an like a nail in the coffin sort of thing. Like once I get my diagnosis, that's it, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I think the key point here that I'm learning from you is really to think about the perspective of that, right? Like, no, this is the first step that you're taking to better yourself. And you can't do that unless you know what it is that you have and understand the steps and the process it takes to get better. And the idea of going to the doctor is you can get better, right? We've even mentioned it before. You've talked about how powerful the body is and how we can really regenerate if we're able to take care of it and
Hmm.
fuel it what it needs. And so this idea, I hope that we all learn together, and I'm learning as we're all talking here tonight, right? That going to the doctors, yes, it's scary. It takes a certain level of vulnerability, but at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. It's only the beginning of the best to come, you know? So thank you for sharing that. I think that's really powerful.
Thank you guys for all the love you just gave it. Yeah.
Of course.
So much love.
Yeah.
We're the two little scaredy cats.
I know, right?
Okay, so my accomplishment. What is one thing I've accomplished thus far? So mine is also pretty big, and another huge part of the reason why we took a little hiatus and break. I have finally completed my master's in instructional design.
Master Pam.
Woohoo! Yes, I have a graduate degree. I finished my last class coursework maybe 2 weeks ago, the week before spring break for us, which was last week of March. And so that was such a huge relief. And I really appreciated the fact that these two girls understood and were very empathetic with me and were also voicing, right, that it would be nice to have a break because they have things as well going on in their lives. And so sometimes you don't know with the group that you're in, people have other priorities, and it could have been a different dynamic where one of us could have really pushed. And so I was really grateful that we all kind of understood and were on the same page of like, yeah, we do deserve a break and we do deserve this time to pause and focus on some other things. And so yeah, that's been the biggest accomplishment so far. It's kind of weird in the sense of I've had this conversation with my coworker that okay, this whole time, right, especially our generation has always been told, go to school, go to school, go to school, right? I still remember that stupid little advertisement. What is it? Went
Education.
to high school, didn't do great.
Yeah.
Get connected
Connected
for
for
free.
free. Free.
Education
Connection.
Like how
Education
horrible.
connection match me with the right college for free. Yeah.
Like how horrible that we were told you
Right.
have to go to college
Scratch
even if
that.
you didn't know what you wanted.
That poor woman. She scarred so many.
And so, like our generation has been really pushed, right? Education, higher ed, and I'm grateful for my education, but it's so weird that when you see job postings, especially when you're starting out, right? You're entry level. And at the time that we were entry level, there were entry level positions that were asking for experience prior. It's like, how do you do that? Tell me how the fuck I'm supposed to have 2 years of experience when this is an entry level position. I've never done this before, So coming from that culture of job hirings and understanding or being told the narrative that you absolutely need a degree to be able to find any job, and this idea that you can't get a job unless you have the college degree, um, and that's how you get the work experience, right? You get the college degree to get the work experience and get the job. And so I was talking to my coworker and thinking it's a little odd because yes, I've completed the master's program, and I even saw on LinkedIn that I really liked and enjoyed my master's program. As with anything, right? Nothing is perfect, and I had my own critiques as a student, but it's still a program that I think is really well designed and has, the college itself had gotten an award for being one of the best online colleges that there are there. And so thinking about, okay, I've received this education. I've received feedback from my teachers like I got this grade that tells me I did a good job. I understand what I'm doing. But still the concept of now I'm the expert and I have the authority to tell people, no, you're wrong. These are the reasons why. It feels almost surreal to me. And I don't really feel it's almost like alien. It's the same description of how I explained to you guys in that episode about Japan and this feeling of coming back and I'm home, but I'm not really home. Like you kind of feel displaced. I don't feel that I fit in just quite yet. And I'm sure it's because I've just finished my degree and I have some work experience in the field. And to be honest, I think the reason why I was able to do so well in the program is because I have that experience. Because I was trying to think about the program in terms of how it would have been if I had been the person I was without this job, right? Somebody who just had a bachelor's in Asian studies, bare minimum exposure to education in a different country, right? Not even with the standards of this country. And going into that program, because it doesn't require any prerequisites, you can just go into it. I don't know if I would have really done a good job or felt as confident as I do. And so this idea that you go to school, you get the degree, so you know what you're doing, quote unquote, and then you can get the job, but then at the job they're expecting you to like bring all of that. But I feel like there's no real reaffirmation that our schoolwork is connected to real world work experience, if that makes sense, you know? And I think it's also tricky because the career that I'm in is kind of relatively new, instructional design. And so it's even still evolving now with the current technologies. Um, but I do appreciate it. It was a lot of work, but it was very fulfilling and it's really clarified a lot for me where my passions lie and where I'd like to continue my work and my education. But yeah, it's still weird to think it's that imposter syndrome, right? Who am I to say that I'm an expert just because I have this paper that says I got this master's degree?
I mean, the only thing that I would argue there, Pam, is like one thing that I think is so underrated about master's programs in general is that more often than not, you are pursuing your master's while you are already in your career. Like you are pursuing your master's while you are already full time working in a field.
See, but I think that's a good amount of people, but that's not everybody. I think there's still a good majority of people who they continue, because there's a lot of programs, right? You finish your bachelor's, there's an accelerated master's program if you continue on. And so those people aren't necessarily, and we've known some of them, older coworkers who that's the path that they took, right? They continued their education straight from school, from finishing. And so there's not really like, they're just continuing. It's easier. You get the master's degree that everyone's saying you need to have. But I know I've heard stories of even my brother, and he's in IT. So I know, understand it's a different field, but of people that he's had apply when he's had to do hiring that say they have master's degrees, but they have zero work experience and they can't hire this person because they don't really understand. They may know the theoretical, but they don't know how to handle the actual practicalities of
Yeah.
day-to-day work life.
They just have the classes.
Yeah, I think so. A dear friend to me will always tell me that after you get your bachelor's, you should start working, right? And you should be to cater to what you said, Kat, right? And I'm sure he's not the only one that thinks this, but I'm quoting him. Like he said, you should work because you got the bachelor's, work in the field you got the bachelor's in, get a get a feel for it. And if this is something that you are thriving in, sure, pursue the masters. You're probably going to get a job that, will encourage that, degree because, you're a good worker or they want you to accelerate or you're just kind of, staging the path on your own because you want to accelerate yourself, whatever the case may be. But and I think it's a good 50-50, honestly. Just with like my classroom, like because I'm still in my graduate program, I can tell you, I even just reading people's like, introduction post
Right.
day, first day of class.
Yeah.
Everybody, it's like a toss up. There are lots of people like me that are like, oh yeah, we already work, in an environment. We already work in the industry. This is our experience. And then there are people that are like, yeah, I work at Starbucks. I work at Aeropostal. I'm a manager at a hotel, right? Whatever the
Mhm.
case may be. And, a lot of the time it's because those people are looking for a career change,
Right.
and which is fair. I don't think one is greater or lesser than the other. Obviously, one comes at an advantage because if you're in a class where they're talking about like, well, what is it like, Pam, to have to negotiate with a client about an instructional deal that you want to make them, and then Pam's like, well, I have 10 stories today about
Yeah.
that, and of course there's another student out there like again the theoretical one that's still at Starbucks will be like, well, I did have a one difficult customer that threw a venti at me. I don't know. Like, it's easy to picture, it's easier to picture the deal on one end versus the other. But I think all comes with its advantages too because man, I've never been so humbled with people that are working like, out of industry, but they're like, "Man, that sounds stupid." And you're like, "You know what? You're right. That does sound stupid. Why do we do it like that?" So I'm definitely thankful for an environment like that,
Yeah.
to toss up, but it's good. It feeds both sides, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a very interesting place to be, especially like being and working in education, right? I think one of the biggest and interesting comments that I would always make, especially with my boss, because she had her PhD is in instructional design and she's all about pedagogy. I would have sometimes conversations with her because I understand that I am coming from a non educational background, right? So I don't really understand what is the credentialing process for somebody to become a K-12 teacher. What is the credentialing process of somebody to become a faculty member? What are the sort of the mandatory trainings or whatever knowledge that you need to have? And so all of the comments that I ever made to her were always prefaced with that, right? Like, I understand I don't really fully know the depth of the history of education and how it's evolved. And that's something that I want to look at and learn on my own. But there were some things that I'm like, why are you teaching us to do these things? And you're telling us that these are best practices and we're not doing them. Why are we still doing outdated things? And this is like a master's degree in teaching, but then what we're doing is not doing that. So is it real? Like that's at least what went in my head. Like, are these best practices actual real? Are they even being used in other institutions if you guys are supposed to be a really good one? You know? And I mean, compared to what I saw for some of the courses on tests, is like, yes, my program very well organized, a lot of clear instructions, but there even with that, right? There was a lot of questions that classmates of mine had and a lot of confusion with specific assignments. And again, nothing's ever perfect. It's just really interesting to be in a place where you're learning to become an expert in something, and what they're teaching you is not what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it's almost questioning, like, do you practice what you preach? Doesn't seem like it. So if you don't, like, why are we even learning this?
That is a really good thing to notice, though. I mean, you and this group of friends that you gathered, like through your studies, like for you all to be the ones calling out your learning is such a good sign of the fact that you are absolutely ready to step into this role. That you've put in the work, because question everything.
Yeah.
As we've talked about before, it's one of the signs of being a genius, is like asking questions and recognizing what you don't know and wanting to know everything else.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the person who asks the question who knows more than the
Yeah.
person who stays silent and just takes in the information.
Yeah. And honestly, if the biggest thing that I've learned about this master's program is there's this huge other aspect of learning that I don't know enough about, that I have to seek out, right? Which is the psychological aspect, which is the actual science of learning, to complement now the theoretical educational theories and best practices that I know about that they say are true based on studies, but I want to know what's the science behind that. So yeah, you're definitely right. Like, it's empowered me, but at the same time almost humbled me a bit and made me confused. But I feel like that's a lot of things in life.
I feel like it's hard when you're in it.
Yes, I'm sure down the line I'll be like, yeah, this was right.
Like, I had it.
Yeah,
I was
what
so
I
on it.
talking about? Okay. So this leads me to the next question for this episode. And this has the theme of let's empower. So we've celebrated big wins, little wins, all the wins. And now I want all of us to feel empowered, right? We're almost halfway through the year. And I think it's important to kind of take a moment to stop and check in with yourself every now and then. And so the question that I wanted to ask us second what is one thing you're not happy with that you'd like to change, right? Because I want to empower all of us. Just because the year's already started, just because we feel like we can't get back up, I want us to know that we can, right? And so what's one of those things that we are not particularly content with and we want to make that change? So I want all of you and all of us to know that we can make that change. We have that power. And mine is to change and focus on my health. So I think it's so funny.
Wow.
Yeah, that Tess had chosen her going to the doctor as her big accomplishment, because that's my biggest fear right now. You are my goals.
Look at that.
yes.
Mirror.
I
Yeah.
think I'm just a step ahead, Pam. I don't think I'm a goal. I think I'm just like I just took one step to the left.
But
you know?
that is
That
a goal.
yeah, that's my goal right now.
Mhm.
Fair,
Yeah,
but just know. It's-
So yeah, so I, like my health journey has always been a roller coaster, and I feel like I was doing relatively well during COVID, after COVID, in being consistent with the gym and eating healthy, but then life throws things at you. There were some things that I was dealt with, and it was a little hard to focus on my health. And then I started my master's program, and so um I feel like now is the time. Like, I finished my master's, I have my sister's wedding to look forward to at the end of the year, and so I want to make sure I look good for that and all the pictures. And so I really want to prioritize my health, specifically something that I've struggled with since I was little, PCOS. And I want to get that in check, and I want to take that in, I want to grab it by the reins and empower myself to find a good doctor and to find a good gynecologist who's going to listen to me, not just throw birth control at me, and like help me figure out real non-medicine based ways to manage my PCOS, right? And for those of you who don't know, PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so that affects my health a lot, right? And it's time that I take charge of it. Like how Tess said earlier, she wanted to take charge of her health. I am in that same boat. I actually even asked my coworker, my baby step was asking my coworker for her doctor because she started seeing a doctor to help balance her hormones, and it's a doctor of osteopathy. And the reason why she said that she went to her is because these doctors look at health from a holistic point of view, right? And they will also offer alternatives to just medicine, and they'll focus on the root cause. And that really appealed to me. Like when she started talking about it and talking about her doctor, that I was like, I want that. I want a doctor like that. I want somebody who will listen to me, who will listen to my concerns, offer me alternatives when I ask for them. and so yeah, that's where I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start with her. I'm gonna see what it is that she has to say, do all of those scary tests that you have to do, figure out anything else that's popping up. And I also want to ask her if she knows other doctors, especially hopefully gynecologists that also look into it holistically and have alternatives to offer me rather than the traditional route of just like birth control, metformin. Oh, you just have to lose weight. Yes, but what else?
Mhm.
It's not that simple.
Right.
Yeah, that is my biggest empowerment change that I want to make.
I think you got this. I think what you said is crazy. Like this right here, that in and of itself is already the universe telling you, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's so close. It's so within your grasp.
Yeah,
If Tess can do it, we can too.
I know, right?
Yes, absolutely. I was terrified, so yeah.
Well, I think this time I'll start with the left side of my table.
Mm.
So, Tess, would you mind sharing with us what's one thing that you're not particularly happy with that you'd like to change?
So this is difficult because I feel like this is something that up until recently I thought I had a good grasp on, but you know, as we do in Aries retrograde, past pains come up and you're like, that wasn't a healed scar like I thought it was. It's actually a very open wound. I think I would like to work on my communication to tell people, what I need, right? I think it's easier for me to do that with certain individuals more than others. I think I have a hard time, telling people that maybe I had a rough past with, or, I have had conflicts with, and then I just kind of change my expectation of them, but I rob myself of communicating what has been inflicted on me, right? Um I could feel pain and I could like internalize it really well, which is what I want to change. I don't want to kind of form all these like not catalysts, but chrysalis, of things in my soul and my heart that I've just kind of labeled. Well, that's the reason why I don't trust XY person, but they're in my life. So how am I going to really benefit from a relationship like that if I just have chrysalis forming? And I have chrysalis forming because I'm not actually advocating what I feel. I'm just kind of internalizing, like, oh, they did that. Okay, well, this is how I'm going to behave now. But that's what I tell myself. That's not what I communicate with this person. So I really want to work on that. I really want to change that because, there are reasons why I'm sure a lot of us will keep things internal. We'll keep things to ourselves, our reasons, our relationships with people. But I've just found that for me, keeping it inside, as my therapist would say, has never turned out well for me. When we speak about things and I tell her like, well, this is how I'm feeling about that, and This is what I did, which a lot of the times, 9 out of 10 will be like, oh, I didn't tell them anything, but I just kind of protected myself and stayed away. And when we interacted again, I just kind of, avoided this. And she'll say, how did that work out for you? Not well.
Shout out to your therapist.
Shout out to my
No, she's
therapist.
so good.
Yeah. And then I'd be like, not good. And she's like,
I see.
yeah, I see. Don't you think you should change that? Yes. Which is why, and the conversation has come up a lot in 2023. A lot. This isn't new, right? But I would like to make it very vocal in 2024 because that's the goal, really, is vocalizing, what things have happened and how they've made me feel, and vocalizing what I would do internally, because it's also not fair, which is something she taught me as well. Like, it's not really fair to just close it off, because what if that person just genuinely does not know? What if that person didn't see like what you saw, or really did not mean that, and they should know, because you should give them a chance for correction. Give them a chance, and if they don't take it, then that's what, that's also an answer on their part. But the chance is what you owe yourself too, because not giving the correction is also just forcing yourself to dealing with something that will hurt you again and again and again. And it has, from someone who hasn't done it before. I can tell you it has. It has hurt me a lot of times. And I thought, and I guess my failure of it really was, I thought it didn't hurt me as much. And I'm realizing, especially in my time, my like January and February like sessions in therapy, I'm like, I'm realizing that those things did, and I just didn't say anything. And don't get me wrong, for all the people listening that hate confrontation, this girl hates confrontation too. There's this permission that I don't give myself to bring things up, because I'm like, oh, well, it already happened, right? And this is also something, take it from my therapist, that she has said, like, well, there's nothing wrong with opening a conversation. It's like, hey, so I know this happened a while ago, but it's actually stayed with me, and I've been thinking about it, and this is why, XYZ. And I never gave myself permission to do that. I thought, oh, well, it happened a while ago, so they're not going to care. And I was like, well, fine, but that's also an answer to people's, depths and their levels of how much energy they give you, But you should, again, give them the chance, right? Bring it up. Even if it did happen a month ago, weeks ago, say, like, I've been sitting with it. It's been bothering me. And I think we need to talk about it. And I think that's really valuable. That type of permission that she gave me was also very important, because it was just so scary and so immature in my eyes, like, oh, it, like, to me, whenever I thought about it without a mental health professional, I was like, oh, that's so immature, that's so like kiddish, that's so like kind of petty, like, why am I bringing up something from the past? And here was someone that's like, no, you can absolutely communicate that this is something that happened in the past, but it has bothered me, but it has really stayed with me. But I've thought about it more, and it actually really did hurt me. So scripts like that have really helped me rationalize, what I should be doing to kind of help undo the things that I'm not happy about. So I'm really scared of that. Don't get me wrong. But I'm gonna, I really am gonna try it.
But like, what an act of self-love to speak out for yourself. Because that's really what it boils down to, right? It's the idea that you never gave yourself the chance to speak up and almost fight for what you deserve, right? You deserve to voice what they did and how their actions affected you. And so even this idea of like giving them a chance, some of us might be rolling their eyes of, do they deserve that chance? Really, no. The chance you're giving is yourself. Give yourself that chance to voice how you feel and respect yourself to defend yourself in that way. And then it's up to the person to show you their character and how they feel about you, right? Do they care and love about you enough to truly understand where you're coming from? Because I can tell you, if they really do, they'll understand and they'll, whatever it is, right? There's communication that happens, maybe some compromises are being said, but the point is that they will appreciate you voicing that, because we're not taught, right, how to express ourselves, how to process our emotions, what it is that we're supposed to do, what is a good response versus a reaction, right? So I am here for you. I feel
Thanks.
like props to your therapist, and I'm no therapist, but it makes me feel like, okay, I didn't give Tess bad advice. I'm not pushing her in the wrong
Yeah.
direction
Similar. Sounds
when I
similar.
say like, yes, please speak your
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, it's worth something when it's like, because it's another testimony. Like, that's not the first time it's been told to me, But of course, how many times are we gonna say like, well, we expect someone we love to tell us that, right? Because they love us, right? But when you hear from someone who's like a third party, very
Hmm.
objective, and they're like, no, that's actually very sound and logical.
Right.
You're like,
Or the idea of like, they
Yeah.
mean the best for us, but
mhm,
we both don't know if that's actual professional advice to
exactly,
follow.
right.
So yeah.
And also to say to something you just said, that we're not taught how to deal with our emotions. uh Sad fact. I was gonna say fun fact, but it's not fun, it's sad fact. I was actually taught that what I wanted to do was the immature and petty thing. I had like a Hispanic dad that was like, oh, but that happened this gone, like, when does it matter now? I was taught that, so
Okay, okay.
yeah,
Fun fact. Ready?
fun fact.
Interesting fact. So I was at a conference today for work, and I sat in a session that talked about emotional intelligence. And the one takeaway that I got from today is, the lady who gave the presentation, I think it's with children, she said, one criticism to a child, one bad criticism, or not even just bad, a criticism, right? Because all criticism to a certain extent is bad. There's negativity to it. To reverse almost like the quote unquote damage that that criticism has, like the effect of that criticism has on a child, you have to do 20 positive reinforcements, like 20 good appraisals or whatever. So, like 20 good compliments, good things, to oppose this one critique for a child, right? It's not to say we have to like let our children do whatever, tell them everything they do is right. It's important about what it is that we're telling them, how we're telling them, and the way that we're telling them, what it actually says to them. Because our parents, God bless them, even us, if we decide to become parents, right? Everyone does the best that they can. There are plenty of books on parenting, but there is no real way to know how to parent any child. Every human is their own person, will have their own ways of processing, handling stuff. Like, you can't control them. So, we parent the best way that we can, the best way that we've learned, the ways that we assume. But that is something that's huge. I like, that was one thing that me and my boss took away from that session, and it reaffirmed, right, a lot of how I felt, because I've had those similar conversations. Love my mother, God bless her, but it's the same, and it comes from that Latino, that generation of being raised like, in her generation, she believes that she's even what's the word that she likes to use, and that I've heard in other like Hispanic household moms, like, oh, if you only had my mother, like, I'm not as strict as that, like, I am chill, I go with the flow, like, I understand and I acknowledge that she was raised in a generation that children couldn't even talk, right? Like, I was lucky that I could sit at the table with the adults and engage in their conversations in our family parties. She was not allowed that. She was told to not speak ever, at the adult table. And so I understand that, and I understand where she's coming from, but it still doesn't mean that I haven't heard those comments, right? And it's one of those things that I know with her has always been like, oh my god, but why can't you get over it? Why can't you get over it? It's like one time, and after I heard that, it was like all the affirmation in the world of yes, it matters. And it's this idea that I tell her, I get that what you're telling me is that your criticisms come from love because you're looking out for me, right? But you're not bringing also the positive, right? You're not backing that up with, you know, beware of this, but I'm proud of this, or this is still good, or it's happened to me in the past where I'm so excited about something and she has to point out all the negatives, and she says it to me. Oh, your friends are always gonna hype you up. No, they're not. They don't really care for you. They're only gonna say all the good things. Nobody's gonna point out the bad things. I have to make sure you see the reality of it. It's like, I don't know about your friends. My friends are pretty balanced. Like they'll give me the good and the bad, and they're not afraid to tell me because I give them that space, and I appreciate them for it. And so it's just so interesting to be aware, right, of that difference and be reaffirmed that my feelings are justified. Like, talk about a huge relief. And now I feel good to let that aspect go. Like I'll never get it, but at least now I know I was, I feel good. I had a reason to not let go.
Yeah. And one other thing that I would say about like what you want to work on this year, Tess, is the greatest sign of it is that you have a desire for connection,
Mm-hmm.
because that's something that I fear in people who are afraid of confrontation, is like the reverse of it is becoming really disconnected from your community that is your life. Because you're so afraid to voice when you disagree, right? With what you think is the norm, with what you think is the majority. The majority could just be the strongest energy in the room, could be one person, could be a group of people. And so just the fact alone of wanting to conquer that, even if it's conquering it again because you took a step back, like it means that you want to have a presence in this world, and you might think that you've fallen back. I would be curious to know what the people who are in your day to day think of that, because it may just be a sign of that you want to progress even further because you still feel stunted towards the person that you are inside, and the person that we see, but maybe it's not who you are 100% of your day. But like that was the thing that struck me the most, because I do feel like yours is probably closer to mine, um, which is to, if I may,
Yes.
uh, talk less shit and do more shit. Because I feel like right now that's my downfall. I feel like right now I'm in a very I've just noticed that I've been talking a lot of shit. I've just noticed that I have always been very particular about it. I feel like I'm not I'm interesting in that I go back and forth. I've talked about this between INFJ and ENFJ with the Enneagrams, and the I and the E stand for introvert and extrovert. And so I go through seasons where I want to be around a lot of people, and then I go through seasons where I don't want to be around a lot of people. I just want to go in through my day to day and go home. And so I would say that because of this hectic schedule, it's put me into the second one of the two. And the bad thing that comes out of it is like I go throughout my day and I decompress with my partner. And then in the decompressing with my partner, sometimes it ends up just being like an unpacking. And he doesn't deserve that, and in the same way that I don't deserve his unpacking, when it's his turn to do it. And I don't want it to like kind of create this aura around my home, right? That like my home is the place where I let it all go. I was even talking about before we started this episode, Pam was cleaning the space with Palo Santo and Sage.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking about how, like, man, I really need to do that to my home. And that's one of the reasons. It's like sometimes I walk into my home and my home doesn't feel clean. And I feel like it's because of me. It's the energy that I'm bringing into my space right now. And ultimately, I say talk less shit, do more shit, because I think that's what it is. I think that right now I don't know, maybe it's because I am doing a lot and struggling with the fact that it still doesn't feel like enough. Like I'm checking off a lot of incredible things for myself right now, but at the same time, there's still so many people around me who are ahead, you could say. And I heard somebody say recently, oh man, I don't want to mess it up, but I'm pretty sure that the guy said, we don't judge people who are doing less than us, but we judge the people who are doing more. And that hit me really hard because when I talk about my talking shit, I'm like, man, if what he's saying is true, then that means I have a lot of work to do because it's kind of true. Like I'm the captain of a track team right now, and honestly, like I love every single one of the runners on our team, those who are faster than me, those who are not faster than me, those who have been running longer, those who've been running shorter. But I got to say I'm so much less cynical of the people who are newer, who are technically making more mistakes, right? Who have a higher learning curve. And I have so much more grace on them. And I have less grace on the runners who are at my level or higher. Those are the ones who I'm like, they should be on it. They should be better at this. What's going on? They're slipping, and like it's kind of hard not to do that. It's kind of hard not to create a standard for somebody because you see them as higher than you. So you come up with all of these expectations for somebody that you think is more ahead of you. But the reality is probably jealousy, envy, uh, fear, and I can recognize that I have a lot of that, and I think I've had a lot of that, and I've been avoiding saying it, and I can't really work on it until I say it. And so do more shit, man. Like my goal, some things I want to keep to myself, right? I don't want to say them on the podcast, but there are certain things that I feel like I really need to be digging into right now to kind of wipe away that energy, and they make me really excited and they give me a lot of like new life as I go into the next part of the year. But it's definitely my downfall, I think, of this year. I feel like, and who knows, maybe my shit talking compared to other people's shit talking, whatever. But it feels like it to me, and whether or not I'm just expressing worry for a friend and not asking them to their face, like, what's going on with you, is like there's so much more opportunity for connection there. And I would rather have that, and give myself fuller relationships and more transparency with how I feel about things and about people. And then also recognizing, like, well, if I don't want to say this to their face, then I shouldn't say it at all, and like really staying true to that because I fall off of that all the time. I'm sure I'm not the only one, of like I say, if I say I don't want to say anything negative, and I'll do a really, really good job at work. And then I go home, and I swear to God, like so many times people will tell me something and they're like, don't tell anybody. And at this point, man, I'm freaking 30. So I'm just like, okay, but I'm going to tell my boyfriend. I'll just tell them to their face, like, sure, I won't tell anybody, but I'm going to tell JP. Like what do you think of me? Like, you seriously, that should make it seem like I'm more truthful to you. Like I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that somebody's going to know this aside from me. But I will do my damnedest, and I will probably not tell anybody else, because I respect that, and I wouldn't want anybody to share like my business. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I, in my struggles, right, with my like day-to-day relationships, especially coworkers, as much as I love my coworkers and all of my different jobs, close quarters. And so that's where a lot of the shit talking, I think, can happen. Not so much with my friends, because as an adult, I feel like I don't see my friends enough to have anything like that happen. It's usually like, I'm seeing you for vacation, I'm seeing you to record a podcast, I'm seeing you to celebrate your birthday. So there's all love, and that's the great thing about being an adult slash super sad. but it's the day to day, and that's what I'm trying to work on. And so I feel like if I just keep my mouth shut a little bit more, keep a little bit more in the head until those thoughts just completely dissolve. I don't know if they ever will, but I have hope that they will, because I feel like the people who I really love in this world, and I stand, on the Do You Fucking Mind podcast, Alexis Fernandez, like I really, really admire that woman and how straightforward she is. And I just see so much authenticity in her and the community that she's created, of like minded people who spill what is going on with them, the raw, the real, the ugly. And I don't judge them for it ever, and I don't judge her for it ever. So why do I think that someone's going to judge me for exposing who I just am as a person? I hope it makes me fuller and easier to love and easier to like trust. So we're working on it. Quarter two. Let's see what happens.
Well, and it's, like living your authentic self is always a daily challenge, because imagine a lot of people live their lives and they don't even know themselves, right? There's people who can't stand the idea of being alone and don't know how to spend time with themselves. So that's something I think you do very well, right? Even with that flaw, I feel like you live pretty authentically to yourself, and it was a journey getting there. But some people can't even fathom the idea of just spending a day with themselves, right? Or spending a day with their thoughts, or not even a whole day, maybe just an hour. And they just distract themselves with groups of people and all of that. And it's so interesting because I feel like I've had conversations recently about interviews and, trying to give advice to people of, should I hold back? Should I say this instead? Should I kind of say these kinds of words? And I found that my advice to those scenarios have always been like, honestly, just be true to yourself, because at the end of the day, if they don't like what you have to say, you can't change yourself, then you just know that you're not a good fit. And that's that. And so it's the idea of, obviously, there are ways to say things. Guys, let's not be assholes. But there's a way to say things authentically and to stay true to yourself, and that is straightforward. That, again, right, helps you give yourself a voice. And if that person doesn't appreciate it, doesn't understand it, okay, I've learned I can't do that with you. Don't expect anything deeper from me. But I'm gonna move on. You know.
Yeah, I think there's also a underlying point here to say that, people aren't what they say. There's a good margin, of course, when you want to weigh your options, like how much shit are they actually talking, because they're making it who they are, right? But on most days, I'd like to think that, we are human, and it's our nature to kind of, want to speak about those around us, but it's not to downgrade or, deride somebody. And it's more to, like, I think, be a part of something, in a very
Mm-hmm.
healthy system. And I believe 100%, like, that's what you have, Kat. Like your your team and you being a captain. Like, I feel like that's, in a weird way, kind of like you looking at the dashboards and vitals of things, And of course, like, we can have those, like, really those snippets where we're like, oh wow, like, I thought that really harshly, and that's not you. That's like a one sporadic nerve that went firing that one time, and I think it's important to know that the decision that you're making is you, on how to approach somebody, how to check in on the vitals in a productive way. Like, that's who you are, not the sporadic, like, intrusive thoughts, if you want to think about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
um because that's just the brain doing what it's engineered to do, to keep firing, with all cannons.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I also feel like the there was a conversation that I had recently about this whole thing, you know, and like about me feeling like I've been talking a lot of shit lately, you know? And also shit doesn't necessarily mean like talking bad about people, but just talking shit, like just saying things that don't actually matter, that don't grow me, you know, that don't get me anywhere. And I recognized something very specific about my energy. And I looked back on a lot of friendships that I've had that fizzle out or don't last for some reason. And the some reason is that I didn't like their energy, you know, and something about this person gravitated towards me and made me question, man, who am I that I'm attracting people like this into my life? Because it's not them. You know, like at some point, something's got to give, and I've got to recognize, like, it's me. I make people like this feel comfortable around me, you know, because I recognize that in the same way that I'm attracted to other people's energies, it's not always like, it's not always a mirror, you
Mm.
know, it's not always a magnet. And so sometimes the people that are attracted to your energy has nothing to do with what you're attracted to, you know, and recognizing that, it did make me want to say more of like how Pam expressed it, to just say what you feel in your mind in that moment, because if they don't like what you say, it will push them away, but they're only being pushed away by who you really are, because the fear is that since maybe I'm not being my fully authentic self, that they're not seeing all of how I feel about them. You know, they're not seeing all of how I feel about the choices that they make in their life and who they are as people. Because sometimes it's as simple as that. You know, sometimes it's as simple as just interests and wondering why somebody has different interests than you but wants to hang out with you. Like, what's
Mm.
the reason? You know, I don't understand it. And so it's definitely a part of the journey too, I would say, because again, as we get older, we have so much less time to spend with the people that we care about. And I do feel like I'm very sensitive to outsiders. I feel like I'm one too. And so that's kind of the energy that I think I attract a lot. I think I attract a lot of outsiders and people who feel more displaced. And some people are just like me, but others aren't, you
Mm.
know, but they're attracted to that one thing. And so I'm really trying to be more mindful of how I am with those people and less censoring of how I really feel about what they have to say.
Well, as an encouragement, another thing I learned in that emotional intelligence session is that we definitely can learn, right? Like one of the biggest things that we went over was empathy and how this is not something that's easy to do, but it's something that you can, practice at and get better at. Something that you both said that I do really want to highlight, right, is this idea that that's not you, right? And one of the things that they mentioned in the session is, and this was, her saying it, if you're in an organization, someone's not treating you, whatever, that one of the steps is address the behavior and not the person. And when she said that, it also reminded me of a Bluey episode, which, if you don't watch that show, you totally should, because it has all the best lessons of how to be a good parent and how to handle certain things like this,
Bluey.
right? And it was that it's the idea that you are not this emotion, this feeling that you have that you are expressing, right? And you have to separate that from the person that you are and understand that you can change that, right? You can learn how to process that emotion. There are feelings. This is how she described it. Feelings are just immediate reactions to things. Where humans, we can't stop that, right? But the reactions to the emotions that we have, and we can be mindful, start paying attention, right, to all of those little things, all of those little messages that we see around us. If you just take the moment to stop and pay attention and reflect, like how we're doing now, right? What's something that I'm not happy with? You made the conscious effort to make that realization that people may otherwise push away or not realize this is what I have to do, right? Or that there may be a problem with me. Another phrase one of my Canadian friends told me about was like, if you smell shit everywhere you go, you should look under your own shoe, right? Like if you then you've noticed that. And that in itself is a huge step because it takes a certain level of self-awareness and admittance, right? that we are not perfect, and that sometimes it's hard for us to admit to ourselves, but understanding that that doesn't mean that's the person that you are, right? That is a behavior, that is an emotion that you can regulate, that is a behavior that you can change. And as Bluey's mother said, you're being cheeky. You're not a cheeky person. There's a difference.
I
Poor
love
Bingo.
that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I just wanted to highlight that.
All of the parents listening to this episode are gonna love that.
Oh,
'Cause I'm
yes.
sure Bluey is all they hear.
Oh, I hope so. And if you don't, you better. So, for the last question and bit of our first second season episode, um, we celebrated, we're empowered, and now I want us to manifest. We still have the rest of the year to look forward to, a lot of time to work on things. And I would like to start with Kat, since you kind of mentioned, this is something that you do want to work on and it ties into your goals. What is one word to describe the theme for your year and your goals? So before you answer, I wanted to explain that I had asked the ladies beforehand if they would be okay with choosing a theme, a word for their theme this year. If you haven't heard me talk about this before, this is something that I've started when I got into bullet journaling. I found it really hard for me to set very specific goals. And so rather than focus on specific goals, I focused on a word, right? And I would experiment with different approaches, different quote unquote goals, different ways to fulfill or that aligned with that word or that theme. So previously I said, routine. I think the other one was, I don't remember now.
Hermit.
Hermit. Oh yeah, that was my word last year.
Right. Nice memory.
Thank you. That's
Yes,
why I couldn't
recall.
remember. I was too deep under the
For real.
um
She killed it that year.
yeah. And it's showing this year. And so I had asked them, right, to think of a word. And so this is where it ties in. So Caitlin, if you would be so kind as to share it with us.
I'd love to. And I love this idea. I think I really needed it. I feel like the way that I entered the year was so chaotic. I lost sight of that. I lost sight of creating a lot of goals for myself. So my word for the year is innovation.
Ooh.
Yes. So I think that this is the year, just the way that things have unfolded and the way that my future looks for at least the rest of this year is a lot of change, a lot of doing things new ways, a lot of finding a new routine. Well, not finding a new routine, but a lot of settling into a new routine and creation. I think that I really, really enjoyed directing that project. I felt like, I've been blessed in a lot of the shows that I've been a part of professionally that I connect with a lot of the stories, but I also recognize that it's not all a blessing, it's also a choice. And there were a lot of stories that I chose not to be a part of, by not auditioning, and I think that ultimately the reason is because there's a lot of stories that I know I'm not called to tell, but that doesn't mean I don't want to be a storyteller. And so when I think of innovation, part of it is finding new ways to tell stories that I connect to and that I see myself in or that I know that I can help tell. And that's definitely a big goal for this year. Not joining projects just because a friend of mine really needs somebody. I want to do projects that I feel really, really called to because life is too short to do things just because, and I can validate it any way that I want once I'm in it, so I don't want to do that anymore. I need to feel the spark from the very beginning. And it also ties into, it also ties into how I feel with new things that I'm discovering, this new passion. I'm about to hit my anniversary. I guess I just did my anniversary with running. With running becoming a significant part of my life, I'm hitting the anniversary for that. And so in that, I've got like all of these new goals and ambitions and things coming to fruition that are happening, and I have to find new ways to battle the imposter syndrome and be that person. Be that person my loved ones believe me to be already, you know? And to me, that comes with having new ideas, that comes with being who I envision myself to be, and like battling the crippling fear that I can have on the day to day. And so I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm freaked out. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it, you know, going in head first for sure. And I have really enjoyed this year so far. You know, I'm coming off of so many highs, and I'm honestly, this is a high. I just finished. The first quarter was filled with directing, still acting in another show, and also balancing training for my first full marathon, and still staying at my part time job. And so the fact that my contracts have ended for the directing and the one that I'm performing in has left me with just my training and my job. And that in and of itself is a blessing. Like the opportunity to breathe, to have a day off, to have 2 days off is like insane. I feel like a human being again. But it's also shown me all of the ways that I've fallen short in a lot of other areas of my life. And all of them are the ones that pertain to me and my personal life and my home, you know? And so I really want to build, maybe I'm stealing yours, but I mean, it's innovation still, but the routine, you know, of crafting a new one and finding out what really works for me as opposed to watching those YouTube videos about how to structure a morning routine, you know? And I know it doesn't work, you know, so I have somewhere to go from. But I really want to just like see what works, see what I can stick with. What can I do every freaking day, you know, without fail, without getting tired, because I don't think I found it yet. Otherwise, I would be, you know, and so that's mine. That's what I'm excited to do and dive into.
I'm so excited for the rest of your year. Like, I can't wait to see what innovative ways that you figure out how to take control, right? And realign yourself and recalibrate. Um, I want to hear Tessa's word before I say what I want to say. So unless you have any comments before we move on to you.
Well, on Kat's word,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you mean? I think it's a great challenge. You know, it's a great challenge to say I've done something and it hasn't worked out, so I'm carving my own path. So that it is very exciting, and it is probably going to make it a lot easier for many people behind you. So, yeah,
I needed that.
yeah.
Thank you.
um, my word is advocacy. I didn't know what my word was going into our episode. Honestly, while we were at question one, I was like, man, I still don't know what my word is. And Pam had shared us this assignment a long time ago. And I kept on thinking of a lot of words. Even throughout our break and our time off, I thought of a lot of things. I thought like, well, I'm doing this, and well, I'm kind of like working on this, and but I think the strand that combines all of that work is advocacy. I agree that, self love, a big part of it is speaking from your own experience and purposefully, not because it's convenient or because you're, in a comfortable situation. You should still, right? But the moments that feel the most uncomfortable, the times that feel the hardest to do it, is where it's the most important. And that's why this is my word, because I feel like I'm in a really uncomfortable situation, looking at things I'd rather not look at, dealing with things I'd rather not know about, but they're vital to me surviving and living a good long life. So advocacy is definitely important because, while I'm on this health journey, I don't think everything's going to be crystalline, or porcelain smooth, right? Like it's going to have things where maybe I'm on a medication and I realize it's not for me. And then I have to go back and remember my word, advocacy. And I have to be really, really strong about that because it's in those really uncomfortable moments where this word, this energy, this theme will really come to, fruition. And I think hopefully come alive in my life the way I hope it to, you know.
Okay. So this is what I wanted to say, right? By the way, I love your word because the connotation that advocacy brings, right, is there's such an importance to it. And so many powerful movements, right, stem from this word of social injustice, right? Advocating for people, advocating for minorities. And, but I also think it's a word that has a space for grace, right? And since you're using it with the focus of yourself, I think that's truly a really beautiful word to have, for your year. And the reason why I wanted to hear yours and why I loved Cats as well. So, when we started recording this episode, as soon as I pressed record, right, we were getting ready, we sat down. Kat gave me her phone for me to look at my notes. And she pointed out the time that it was 2222.
I use military time. So
Yes. And so 2222 is an angel number, right? And we had looked it up. I was like, oh my God, what does that mean? And so I think it's so appropriate and such a beautiful sign from the universe, right? That what we're doing, the decisions that we're making for ourselves is really what's best for us, and what we need right now. Because 222, I mean, the number two itself, it's this idea of balance, it's this idea of duality. And a lot of what came up when we were looking up what this angel number means, right? And I think it also is kind of perfect for this season that we're in, Aries seasons of I do, right? It's about trusting yourself, trusting the process, um, aligning. So I kid you not, one of the things here says paying a reminder to pay attention to your inner world and align your actions with your life's purpose. Another one that I saw here that I thought, like, having confidence in your abilities, embracing and with a positive go with the flow attitude, the courage to continue. That's what counts. And like, it indicates that you make peace with yourself so you can focus on what the future holds for you, right? So all three of us, I feel, in reflecting and pausing and taking this moment to, celebrate, understand what it is that we have to, what we want to change, what we want to improve, and now setting the mentality for the rest of the year, right? That theme, the word that I had chosen, I typically, and the words that I've chosen in the past have been words that are more practical, that are more attainable, that are more tangible, concise. In my personal opinion, I think not as scary. Um, and this year, when I was thinking about going back to choosing a theme and kind of using that again as my compass, I decided the word dream. You know, I decided to aim for an ambiguous word, a word with so much promise, but no straight definition of what that looks like, what that means. And I feel like I have put in a lot of effort in my life. I've done a lot of work, obviously, finished my master's and all of that. But that aside, just a lot of work in trying to do the best thing, trying to do the right thing, trying to do the thing that will get me the most money and what I think, will make my parents proud and what I think will, fits in terms of society's views of success and all of that. And so I decided, you know what? I am going to decide that I don't know what I want, that I'm going to allow myself to dream as big as I want, anything that I want, try to dream things that I even think are impossible and make that available to myself, right? And it takes, dream is a huge jump. It's like the full card. You're kind of jumping off the cliff in full young naivete, right? And you don't know where you're going to land and you don't know what's behind that door. And it could be really scary. And I hear a lot of the times, better the devil I know than the one I don't. But honestly, what if the one you don't know is actually like a god who is has all these blessings to offer you and you would never know unless you take that leap of faith. And that's why I thought it was so beautiful that we started this recording with 222, this idea of trusting yourself, of trusting your abilities, trusting your powers, right? The magician card in play here, knowing that we have the power to change and make those changes that we want in our life. So yeah, that's my word. And I love that this episode started with this angel number. I think it's a beautiful affirmation for the three of us, and it makes me really excited for the rest of the year. And I would love to do an end of the year check to see, how our theme went. And honestly, when I've done this in the past, it never goes exactly as I plan it. And that's part of the reason why I choose a word, right? It gives me that flexibility to succeed. And even one of the things here for 222, um, it talks about, right, the courage to continue. It says success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And I think that kind of resonates between our three words, right? Innovation, advocacy, dreaming. Those are all words like that take a lot of effort. You don't know what's going to come from that. You don't know the results, right? You have all the hopes in the world with advocacy. It's innovation because it's never been done before. It's something new that you have to create. It's a dream, something that is intangible. And so I love it. I love the words that we've chosen for ourselves. And I think it's so beautiful. I'm so happy with this episode. Yeah.
I think that dream is epic, Pam. I think you blew it out of the water, honestly. And it shows, I think, how valuable this practice is of you creating these singular words, to theme 365, 66 this year, days, to wake up and God, like wake up and tell yourself to dream. Like, are you kidding me? That's so magical. And I'm really excited to see how it continues because honestly, if you really have been practicing this since the beginning of the year, I can see how you've already made a dream come true. So like it's perfect for you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I was just gonna make um I think it's funny because to me when you said that I was like, wow, it's such like a polarity to hermit,
Yeah.
because hermit in the tarot is like the symbol of, a sage, right? Um a very cemented sage, like he's in his position at the end of the bridge, he holds his lantern, he's meant to wait for you right here, and he is so secluded because of that, he doesn't kind of wander outside, and he is a specialist in his own realm because that's all he's known. So such a polarity, where you're like, we're going outside of this realm. It's all very empowering. And fun fact also lets you know that we are very dedicated to this project of High Tea Mystique because we're recording at 22:22. For all of you that know military time, that's very late. So
That's true.
you're welcome.
We love y'all. We love this pod.
You're welcome.
This pod is part of that dream, right?
Dream.
Small part that's come true.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you ladies so much for sitting with me. I love this episode so much. And as with our last season, this will be something that we will continue through. We are going to get into our tarot portion of the evening. Tonight, I have a tarot deck that I bought on a trip to Toronto, and it's called the Cosmo Tarot. And honestly, I didn't know it at the time. I just looked at it and I thought it looked, I loved the imagery on it, but it says Cosmopolitan. So I don't know if Cosmopolitan designed this deck. It
Oh
very
my
much
god.
looks like their logo. But I was very, if you look up the images, and as always, I'll take the pictures of whatever cards come out. It's very different. It's very unique in how it depicts each of the cards. And I was very drawn to it today because of its abstractness. And it felt right with what we're doing, right? The mindfulness, um, and checking in. And I really wanted to use them to see what kind of messages came out today. So, we've celebrated our wins, we've empowered ourselves with a challenge of a change we'd like to make, and we're manifesting with a word that's going to help theme and navigate the rest of the year for us. And so, what I would love to ask the tarot cards for us today is, even for you folks, right, listening to us, I'm sure these are questions that are probably going on through your mind, and I hope you're taking the time to check in with yourself. Um, if you've chosen a word, or whatever challenge you've decided to take on, if you decide to do this with us, whatever advice the tarot has for us, what is something that we all have to be mindful of during this year, this time, whatever challenge or goal we decide to set for ourselves. Um, and they were very quick to respond this time.
They sure were. They wanted to hit
So
the ground running.
oh, yes. Okay, so we have the Seven of Swords, we have the King of Swords, and we have the Four of Wands. So one of the things that I think is so interesting and unique about this deck, the sword is indicated by a pen, right? Pen is mightier than the sword. And then the wands are indicated by keys. And then the pentacles, because at the bottom of the deck is the Ace of Pentacles. Oh my God. Okay. The bottom of the deck is the Ace of Pentacles. So I will just start off with the Seven of Swords. And of course, as always, just to see if there's anything within the deck that it comes with, any extra information that it might have with their specific depictions. So with Seven of Swords, it says someone is lying. Is it you or someone else? And the Seven of Swords in tarot, I believe, is it leads up to the depictions of the 8 and 9, right? Where 8 kind of indicates um thoughts that you think are happening, or things that are out of your control, but you are in control. And then the 9 indicates being enclosed by something like physical and mental. And they all lead up to the 10 of Swords, where it's ultimately like all of this energy, this worry, everything that you're taking on falls down on you. It's literally all 10 swords on a body that's on the floor dead. And so the way that this Seven of Swords is depicted, there's 5 pens that are on the palm, and there's 2 that's behind, and there's like a crystal in the back, right? And with this question or this statement of, is it you or someone else that someone's lying? I think what really stands out to me is this idea that they ask first, is it you? Right? And we've even kind of brought that up in today's episode. And I think a lot of the times, some of the obstacles that stand in our way are obstacles that we put in ourselves. So I feel like it's kind of warning us or asking us to really take this moment where we're checking in, like, be true to yourself, swallow the hard truths, right? In order to be authentic, in order to be your true self, you must also understand yourself, understand the light and the shadow, and understand what the shadow has to teach you, and where the light comes from, and what is it trying to shine, right? Because wherever there's light, there's a shadow that goes behind it. um so think about that. Whatever that word is that you're trying to go towards, whatever that thing is that you're not particularly happy about and you want to change, Are you blaming it on other people? Right? Is it actually somebody else? Are you blaming it on yourself? Because we can do that too, right? We can be, it's very easy to kind of talk down about yourself, not voice your opinions, right? Not advocate for yourself. So think about both of those things. Be true to yourself. What is it that you could be telling yourself to justify or to excuse or to distract or to move away, right?
Don't form chrysalises.
Don't use harden like Pokemon. Do the opposite. Evolve. Be that Butterfree. But after that is the King of Swords. And this one is just one pen. The moon, the full moon, beautiful full moon, blue moon is in the back of it with diamonds on the left side. There's still a cloud in the back. And there's also almost like a circular grid radar looking image. And in the book, it says, make decisions based on facts, not feelings. So, again, sword energy is about the intellect, right? It's about communication, it's air energy, it's mental. And so it's really easy, especially in this time of retrograde, to react, to not be in charge and in check of those emotions, right? And excuse me, justify maybe what the other person did, what you're doing, whatever lie you may be saying or hearing, um, because it makes you feel a certain way, or it made you feel a certain way, and so try to take that moment to step back, and that might be where part of that honesty comes from, right? Like, look at the facts. Is it you? What are some facts that it's pointing to you? What are some facts that it's not pointing to you if you're on the opposite end and like thinking it's all your fault? And the king is the final court card. So it's not to say that the page came out, we're still learning, or that the knight, it's not these lower levels. It's the king. It's the masculine energy of knowing, I know what to do. I know how to handle all of these. These are all the decisions that I can make. And it's this idea of decisiveness, right? That's also a word that comes up when I looked up the angel numbers. It's being able to make those decisions, it's being able to make that realignment. I know this is not good for me. So why am I still accepting that? Why am I still telling myself that this is still good for me? Um, or the opposite, right? Like, why am I accepting that this is bad for me if I know that it's bad for me, but it makes me feel safe or it makes me feel whatever? Really take that moment to just check in, write down the facts, and use that to help you, right? Especially in this time that we're in. Um, and if things are coming back from the past, why are they coming back? What are the facts of what's resurfacing? And use that to help guide the decisions that you're making. And then we have the Four of Wands after that. And for this one, it says celebrate with your family and friends, prioritize joy, right? So I kind of see this as a way of, because wands here are shown as keys, and we have the two wands on each side, so kind of similar to the Four of Wands depiction in the traditional tarot aspect. There's also some diamonds in the middle, and then there's a pink full moon in the background, kind of towards the right. I sort of see it as this moon card. The moon pops up in both the king and the wand, and it's blue and pink, right? So I'm almost kind of seeing it as we mentioned earlier, a polarity, right? Yin and yang. It's this idea of balance. And even the Four of Wands, it's two on each. It's perfectly balanced. And this deck in particular, which I had never seen before, uses uses keys to depict wands, right? So it's almost this idea of wand is fire energy. It's the doing, it's the action. It's like these are the keys that you need to get to where it is that you have to go. And so maybe look for that joy. And it might take a reconnection with family and friends. It might take a reconnection with yourself. But in using the facts, in using that to navigate and help you make your decisions, also take into account, right? What is it that's making you happy? Earlier, I had asked what's not making you happy. Where are you going to change? And that's a part of that, right? Like using joy, understanding this is not meant for me. Maybe this worked and aligned with me in the past, but I've outgrown this. I no longer align with this and I need to find something to replace it, like how Kat was saying, or find a way to stabilize this thing that I know makes me feel good. And I think we already have it within us, right? Because this key shows up and the Ace of Pentacles is here at the bottom of the deck, which I will read very quickly. Another moon, there's two moons here actually that are full and they're green. And the pentacles in this deck are shown as a clock, which gives me a little bit of anxiety. But here it says manifest it. You have an opportunity to make major money. So I honestly feel like these cards are echoing a lot of even the questions that I've asked today, right? What's something to celebrate? What's something to empower ourselves and to challenge? And what's that decision of that one thing we have to change? And then let's manifest, right? What is it that we want to create? So I think these card, and so the reason why I said earlier, like, oh my God, because behind the Ace of Pentacles is the Star card. And so I think
I love
it's
that card.
a beautiful, yeah. I mean, on this deck, it's on it, it's just diamonds that are placed together to replicate a star, and in the middle, it's like a pink lip because it's Cosmopolitan, you know. But I love this idea that yeah, okay, you might be making some things that you kind of have to take a look at, right? Is it really you? Are you lying to yourself? Is somebody lying? But at the end of the day, we know it's that gut feeling, it's that intuition. Why are you telling yourself or why are you allowing this to happen to you when you know it's not good for you? It doesn't serve you anymore. So release it. Make that decision. You can't do it because you feel so attached to it emotionally. Okay, write down the facts of what is the reality of what it does to you and how it makes you feel and the effects of that. And then use that and try to find other things that bring you joy, other reasons to celebrate or lean towards your friends and family that bring you joy, right? That make you feel good and go towards that and use that to help guide you in the decisions of what to cut off and what toxicities to remove from you, right? And there are good omens in here. We have the Ace of Pentacles, the Star right behind it to back it up, full throttle. And these cards came out straightforward. Didn't need much shuffling. All they said, "This is it. That's it. We got this."
Yeah, and just because I felt something when you highlighted the color of the moon, I actually looked it up, and we're actually gonna have a pink moon this month.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So and apparently a pink moon will kind of just from the almanac, it'll always kind of appear around April because the pink moon symbolizes the start of spring.
Wow.
So we're actually going to have it coming up. So take a look out because the pink moon is coming up this April 2024. So
And the pink moon is on that Four of Wands, that joy, that celebration.
yeah.
So there's good things to come.
Yep.
And it's sooner than we think. You know, this clock is here. And it's funny because Pentacle energy is the slowest moving energies. And they decide to use a freaking clock. The only thing that I see, and it's like that old timey, like stopwatch looking clock. All I think about is a white rabbit from Alice in Wonderland. I'm late, I'm late, I'm late. But it's the Pentacle energy. It's supposed to be slow. Well, not supposed to, but it, it's related to being slow. So it's almost like, if you want to celebrate, if you want that joy, if you want to be in that King of Swords energy, the time for it to be real and to manifest into reality is now, so long as you take the reins. And I truly believe that because of the star card that's right behind it. So, my friends, take charge of your life, take charge of your destiny. You have the power. If you doubted, you've listened to us now. I am telling you to your ears, you have the power. We all do.
Yeah. At least start with this year.
Yes. And start with a
do.
word.
Yeah.
We do. We really do.
So, thank you, ladies, for staying with me
Oh, please.
and sitting through this episode and sharing what you had to share. And thank you all for listening to us. We're so excited to be back.
Back like we never left.
Oh, yes.
Don't call it a comeback.
That's right. Full circle, full circle.
And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode and the one after that. And the one after that.
And the one after that.
Until next time.